Hello friends, how's it going? So I'm going to show you today how I mark my Bible or my Bibles. I do use one main Bible when I'm studying, but it changes every 4 or 5 years, sometimes every 3 years, it depends. I do use different Bibles for different purposes, like I normally read in one Bible and then I study and make annotations in another Bible, and sometimes I will preach in other Bible or other Bibles. There's a couple of you who asked me how I mark my Bible, so I thought about recording this video. But to me, it's really personal. It's something that I do because I love to underline the Bible. It helps me to focus. It helps me to meditate in what I'm reading. It helps me to memorize. I have sort of a photographic memory, and I think it really helps me when I underline the Bible. I can remember the color. I can remember the place where I underlined. So it's really nice for me. And I also like to make annotations of cross references, of ideas that come to my mind, or special words in the original language that I want to keep there so I can remember when I'm studying, when I'm preaching, or whatever. I started underlining when I was reading my Bible in my teenage years. If you watch my video on suicidal thoughts, you will see this Bible there. It's a Bible in contemporary Portuguese, and I was born and raised in Portugal, so that's why. I was just starting to read the Bible, so I would underline just with a regular blue or black pen, and I wouldn't even care what the pen was. Then when I started studying the Bible in a more systematic and profound way, I wanted a more literal translation. This is the Bible that I took with me. My mom gave me this Bible, and I took it with me to France, to the seminary where I studied theology. And you can see that I just underlined in some colors, with some colors, but there was not really a pattern, at least not in the beginning. I was still in France, I think, when I started reading this one. It was my last year of studies. Still a more literal word-for-word translation in Portuguese, and a pattern started to emerge while I was studying with this Bible. And you can see I not only underlined and made cross-references, but I would sometimes do these lines with some rulers that would point to different passages or different parts in the same page that I wanted to connect, and I don't do that anymore. Then when I was through with this Bible, I did something completely different, and I would underline only with pens and only with 3 colors, just blue, red, and green. And that's how I underlined my next Bible. This is still in Portuguese. It was pretty beat. These are not high quality bindings. They were just Bibles that I was interested in using. And this one I underlined just with blue, red, and green. Mainly the Gospels here are underlined. Those were the main books that I studied in this Bible and preached from. Matthew 5 is pretty marked. Luke here. It's also a lot of underlining and note-taking. And then when I finally decided that I didn't want to use this Bible anymore, it wasn't looking too good, and I wanted to transition to actually a translation that was even a little bit more literal, I started using this Bible. It's also Portuguese. Now, I was using this Bible when I moved to the States, but I was back at using different colors, not only 3 colors and not only pens, but also color pencils. I really like to use color pencils. Okay, so here you can see I still have those 3 main colors, red, green, and blue, but I also was using color pencils. Here they are. Ta-da! When I moved to the States, I started using a Bible in Spanish. I don't have it here with me. And another Bible in English. And this was the Bible that I started using 4 years ago when I moved to the States. And throughout the years, I kind of felt that a pattern was emerging. For me, sometimes one text is actually referring to different things, and I would like to underline it with many, many different colors, right? But normally what I do is I use yellow for texts or passages or verses or even sentences that have to do with God or theophanies, appearances of God or God talking or something that draws my mind to God in a general sense. Then I will use red for the sacrifice of Christ or for things that are very, very central in the Bible. And to me, of course, the sacrifice of Jesus is the central truth of the Bible. Then I use green for texts that make me think of hope or faith, okay? There's a distinction there between faith and hope, but I use green for that. And I also use orange for morality, law, duty, related passages in the Bible. Then I will use violet or pink for texts that make me think or that talk about sin and its consequences. I also use purple for texts that talk about Satan. Now, I don't hate purple, okay? However, although I love this color and I don't love Satan, I use purple for texts that have to do with Satan or the great conflict between Christ and Satan. Then I use blue for Jesus. Now, red I use for texts that have to do with the sacrifice of Christ. Blue I use for texts that have to do with Jesus in a more general sense. Sometimes that relate to the humanity of Christ. So yeah, I use blue for that. No special reason. I just started doing it and that's what I do. So sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes I will use brown for texts that have to do with the weakness of humanity. Okay, and it just makes me think of dirt and dust, and we are dust. So, although we're a very precious dust for God, it is very rare that I will use black. But sometimes I have used black also for Satan-related topics. Well, yeah. I use microns, as you can see, to underline. When I make the annotations of my cross-references or I write a word in the original language on the margin of my Bible, I use this, Unilacubos. You can get them on Amazon. I use the 0.7 Unilacubos, okay? And I really like these pens. They're not expensive and they have worked for me over the years. So yeah, I mean, there's pens that are way better out there, okay? I'm just telling you what I do. It's not expensive and it works for me. And sometimes, very rarely, I will use highlighters like the sharpies. It's very rare. I normally don't like to use these. I don't know why. No specific reason. I just prefer using color pencils. And the color pencils that I use is this brand, Carandache. I really love this brand. It has worked for me for many, many years. I was studying in France, and our college was really close to Switzerland, to the border with Switzerland, close to Geneva. And I would go to Geneva buy my Carandache sometimes, and sometimes I would buy them in France or Portugal later on. So you can buy them on Amazon if you like, and probably I'll leave a link or two down below. These pencils are really, really good for underlining the Bible. The only Bible that I couldn't underline very well with these pencils was the ESV Preaching Bible. It's coated paper, and it doesn't work so well. All my other Bibles, it worked really well. I've underlined Schuyler's. I've underlined the Preaching Bible by Thomas Nelson, the New King James Preaching Bible, works beautifully. I underlined my Holman here, a large print, New King James, and it works wonderfully. So these are the Bible coloring pencils that I use. I mean, they are not specific for Bible coloring, but they are very good for that. So this is how it looks. I mean, I am studying the Bible, and what I do is normally I go, if I study one chapter or one book, I'm studying the book of Hebrews right now. I go just, as time permits, verse by verse or sentence by sentence or chapter by chapter or a little passage by passage. I mean, paragraph by paragraph. It really depends. But I normally do a lot of cross-referencing. Now that I'm studying Hebrews, what I've done is I have put also in the margins some of the titles of Jesus or things that are said about Jesus. He's better than the prophets. He is better than the angels, more excellent. He has a more excellent name. He is the Son of God, worthy of worship, the creator of the world. He sits at the right hand of the Father. He's eternal, victorious. So you get the picture. It's just highlighting in my mind. I'm writing it in red. I could do blue and red. What sometimes happens is, since one verse for me may be talking about different things, like Hebrews 4:16, it tells me about God because it's talking about the throne of grace where God is sitting. But it also talks about Jesus. The grace of God is given to us through Jesus. So I will underline throne of grace in red because it talks to me about the sacrifice of Christ. Mercy and grace also. I've underlined the word boldly in green because I think that our faith in Christ makes us bold to come to the throne of God. So I've underlined with color pencils in yellow because I'm drawing near to the throne of God. I have also underlined in red and in green because this text to me talks about so many realities that go together. So that's what I do when I'm coloring and underlining the Bible. Many times I will use color pencils, but then I will underline with my Micron pen in the same color or in a different color if the text is referring to different realities, or if I want to underline in my mind and in my study different realities. I know that, for instance, in the Preaching Bible, I was just using it to read. I've preached with this Bible once, but actually I'm using it more as a reader. And still, sometimes I love to underline so much that I start underlining when I'm reading. I really can focus more when I underline, and things do get different. Like, for instance, I was reading through Genesis 24, and I had these ideas on a sermon about Isaac and Rebekah. So I took some really very simple notes here. I just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have 17 points. And I just put words that make me think about the things that I want to highlight in a sermon. Sometimes when I preach and I've studied, but I want to use a different Bible in the pulpit, I will go and underline the passage that I'm going to preach from in that Bible. And I remember I preached with this Bible. It's a Schuyler New American Standard. I'm actually very excited because I love this Bible so much, and I wanted a New King James like this, and Schuyler is fulfilling my dream. They're going to put out something very close, just has, it's a little bit more thick because it has a concordance. It's coming. As you can see here, I preached on Acts 1 and 2. I preached on something that had to do with Acts 1 and 2, and I've underlined, you don't see a lot of cross references or anything. I just underlined, and yes, I use my color code, and I know what I want to express when I'm preaching, so I like to have it underlined too. Even I haven't worked the text in this Bible. I was just preaching with it, and I have some cross references. Sometimes I use them when I'm in the pulpit. Sometimes I have even done what some pastors do, which is to put the cross reference that you're going to next, right next to the Bible verse or passage that you are reading or preaching on. And yes, sometimes I do that. It's not often, but sometimes I do that. And that sometimes allows me to preach without notes. And things may still change, of course, and in a few years I may be doing it in a completely different way and even more structured, but for now this is where I am. So God bless you, my friend, and see you in the next video. Bye!